Another wild week in Washington. A game of musical chairs at the White House. But the question is, will Steve Bannon get a chair or will he get the boot? Plus, Sean Spicer continuing his apology tour after those shocking comments about the Holocaust. Then we bring in our panel of attorneys here to take a look at the debacle at the United Airlines. That overpass passenger, as you saw, dragged bloody off that plane. Plus, Neil Gorsuch, he is now on the highest court in the land. We will take a look at the high-profile cases that will come before the Supreme Court and how big of an impact could the new justice make. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks so much for joining us this Wednesday evening. We're going to get to our panel of legal experts in just a moment, but first we focus on politics, and there was much of it today. And to do that, I'm joined in this segment by our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. And first up, Andrew, our occasional reminder that comparisons to Hitler and the Holocaust, never good ideas. For those who missed it, yesterday, for some reason unsolicited, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer learned that lesson the hard way.
You had someone as despicable as Hitler, who didn't even sink to using chemical weapons. So you have to, if you're Russia, ask yourself: is this a country that you and a regime that you want to align yourself with?
Of course, Spicer ignoring the fact that Hitler used gas to kill millions of people at concentration camps, a fact I'm sure Spicer cleaned up when he was asked about it later in said briefing.
Thanks. I just want to give you the opportunity to clarify something you said that seems to be gaining some traction right now. Quote, Hitler didn't even sink to the level of using chemical weapons. What did you mean by that?
I think when you come to sarin gas, he was not using the gas on his own people the same way that Assad is doing. I mean, there was clearly, I understand your point. Thank you.
I'm just giving you a
thank you. I appreciate that. There was not he brought him into the Holocaust Center. I understand that. But I'm saying in the way that Assad used them, where he went into towns, dropped them down to innocent into the middle of towns, it was brought to it. So the use of it, and I appreciate the clarification there. That was not the intent.
Holocaust centers. Well, Spicer later issued 3 separate clarifications before finally just apologizing outright for the comments, and his apology tour continued this morning.
I made a mistake. There's no other way. There's no other way to say it. I got into a topic that I shouldn't have, and I screwed up. And I hope people understand that we all make mistakes.
Okay. By the way, during Passover, Andrew, the
it
comments,
to be Passover,
right?
Yeah.
And also, not that it was connected, but Donald Trump chose to skip an event in the White House acknowledging Passover. Leave that aside. He kept drowning. He kept grabbing buckets of water, but there are a lot of people saying that this might be the final straw. Trump apparently not a big fan of his work beforehand. He liked the aggressive tone that he saw, in the run-up to the election, even after the election. But since he's been put in, he's made adversaries of the press, and to unprovoked to go and bring up this analogy. And how many times have you said, don't play the Hitler card? It never works for anyone to draw that analogy. It was cringeworthy watching that.
Oh, it really was. And this was a different problematic press conference for Sean Spicer. Different in that the other times that Spicer had come before the press and either lied or misled, it was at the president's behest in most cases. Think of the first day of the administration and the inauguration photos. Yeah. This was just Spicer talking and trying to answer a question. And I honestly give him the benefit of the doubt for just misspeaking, and I think you can sort of see that as he goes through it. Now, some are criticizing the Trump administration, the same administration that did not specify Jews when signifying the Holocaust Remembrance Day, and noting that Steve Bannon tends to keep league with some people who are borderline, if not fully, anti-Semitic. And so there are some people who think that this is the final straw for both Spicer and for what they see as an anti-Semitic thread in this administration. I'm not sure I would be prepared to go quite that far.
But do we think Spicer, regardless of motivations, let's just say it was a bad mistake, but nonetheless, he's the voice of this administration. A lot of people said, that's it. It's when, not if he goes.
Yeah, and that would seem to be this would seem to be a good time for that to happen, although I'm not sure it'll happen immediately. Trump is reticent to get rid of people who are loyal to him. He likes a certain amount of scheming going on among his grouping. Look, the other takeaways for me from all of this was that it took Spicer 3 corrections before he finally apologized. This has been a problem with Spicer from day one. If you don't know the answer, say you don't know the answer. Don't
this
lie
wasn't
or
even
mislead.
Being stumped by the question.
This was just
he
refusing.
He just went there on his own. You could see at that moment where he said, "Oh God, I'm drowning.
Right.
What have I done?"
Right, and it just wouldn't backtrack. And the other problem with Spicer is that he has no credibility in the room.
Well, talking about possible musical chairs in this administration, we get to the infighting in the White House itself. Sean Spicer's Holocaust gaffe, it's got some wondering if not only he's used up all his lifelines, but others as well. 4 top aides seem caught in a power struggle. Spicer, Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus, they remain reportedly aligned together. Spicer, he worked for Priebus when they were at the Republican National Committee, and Priebus has gone to bat for Spicer on more than one occasion, reportedly. The two have reportedly also been feuding with one Steve Bannon, who has also been feuding with Jared Kushner. It sounds like a bad soap opera.
Yep.
The president's advisor and son-in-law. Bannon, who managed the campaign's final months here, is viewed as the biggest Washington outsider, both in terms of experience and his populist anti-institutional worldview. By the way, he wears that description very proudly as being an outsider. And Bannon has also been working against Kushner, leaking that Kushner is a globalist and cuck, 2 of the deepest insults among the alt-right crowd. Bannon-Kushner fighting has gotten so bad, even the president directly intervened, and Trump may be turning on Bannon. In an interview with a New York Post columnist, Trump didn't exactly bathe Bannon with praise, saying, "I like Steve, but you have to remember he wasn't involved in my campaign until very late. I had already beaten all the senators and all the governors, and I didn't know Steve. In my own strategist, it wasn't like I was going to change strategies because I was facing crooked Hillary." Adding also, "Steve is a good guy, but I told them to straighten it out or I will." Translation, if it's a fight and a family's in the fight, you're not going to win in any walk of life here, especially when the son-in-law is Jared Kushner.
I find it very difficult to think that Steve Bannon would survive a power struggle with Jared Kushner. If it continues to get protracted, if it continues to wind up in the president's inbox, I have a feeling that he would cut ties with Bannon. Obviously, Kushner's not going anywhere in particular. I don't think Trump wants to get rid of Steve Bannon. I think there are some concerns that the SNL clips that we saw where Bannon is the Grim Reaper and he's the actual president and Trump is at a kiddie desk, I think those kinds of impressions have gotten to President Trump, and there is some reporting that he's in fact unhappy with the notion that he's sort of following Bannon's lead on all of these things. So anything that interferes with the president's ego could put that other person, their head on the chopping block. But as we talked about earlier this week, Bannon was the whisperer to the alt-right throughout this campaign. Bannon got the coalition of, the far right together to support Donald Trump. And so Trump may feel beholden to Bannon in a certain degree. And also, there's a certain danger if Bannon's outside the White House lobbing
fair enough,
grenades
but there's
in.
also concern, conversely, that Bannon got him here, or at least helped get him here to a certain point. But as he learned with healthcare, he can't win this way. So he may have to go in another direction, and he wants wins. Now, one more headache for the administration, and that's the latest bombshell linking former Trump advisor Carter Page to the Russians. New report says the FBI got a FISA warrant last summer to monitor Page's conversations. FISA court can only issue warrants against Americans if they believe those Americans are working as an agent of a foreign power. That's the threshold. In this case, Page's connections to specific Russians prompted this warrant. Now, we've known since January that Page was one of the people in Trump's orbit linked to Russia, hardly the only one, and that Page was the target of investigations. There have also been reports that Russians may have tried to turn Page, and his name was mentioned in that British dossier that indicated that Russians tried to compromise Trump as well. Now, Page says he didn't do anything wrong. He also says, and other Trump supporters believe this warrant may have been just evidence that this is the Obama administration spying on the Trump team. Listen, today it's been one administration official over the other saying that not only Syria was awful, butchers, etc., but that Russians have to decide if they're either with America or that they're with Assad. All that said, the idea that the Russian investigation went away because we're fighting about Russia and Syria and whether or not it's an unholy alliance doesn't change the fact this investigation is not only ongoing, but these kind of open threads are still out there.
Oh, absolutely. And Carter Page and Paul Manafort are at the tip of the spear on this. And you know, they probably need lawyers sooner rather than later. There are some lawyers coming on the show in a few minutes, so maybe he might have representation here. But look, Carter Page is not unknown to be involved in the Russia process. Same with Paul Manafort. The question is, how close were they really to Trump, and whether there was any back and forth, whether it was just, you know, one direction, you know, in terms of their communication, either getting information from Russia or giving information to Russia. But it does not look particularly good for Carter Page. And if Page or Manafort know about details to other people in the Trump orbit or to Trump himself, that would be a pressure point that I would think prosecutors would run on.
I'm sure some people watching other channels right now, Page is saying, oh, this is just political payback, whatever. To get a FISA warrant, there's a clear threshold. They just don't hand them out. They have to believe that you were working basically in cahoots with the Russians right now, and there was material evidence or at least legitimate suspicion to say, yes, and because, this warrant's a warrant.
And because that court is secretive, you need apparently additional documentation. And by the way, the other takeaway from this story for me, why didn't the Obama administration let some of this information out? If the FBI had a warrant on Carter Page in June or July of last year, you would think there would have been enough evidence to go forward to the American public.
About why didn't the CIA do more? Why didn't the FBI do more? And certainly, why didn't the Obama administration?
But I think all of that goes back to Barack Obama.
Very well, it might. Andrew, thank you very much. Andrew mentioned our legal panel is going to join us. And the first story we're going to get into is, you guessed it, the United Airlines passenger fiasco. A guy dragged bloody off a plane. Could this lead to new laws that will protect you and me here from getting bumped on a flight that we bought a ticket for? Stay with us.